I've got a whole load of different tips for Scum which you'll probably find useful. Like, did you know you can put your friend in a wheelbarrow and wheel them around, and he can use a shotgun to cover you while you're doing that? There are also some more useful tips as well, like if you see a bushman, grab it. So this is a good melee weapon that's kind of like a machete. It's quite big, but if you get hold of this, it can be very handy against NPCs and zombies. So NPCs, if you want to fight them, I'd recommend getting close and then using a weapon like this to attack them. You'll often find that you're in a situation where you've not got great gear, especially if you just died and you're starting out, and then an NPC appears and you've got to deal with that. Now, sometimes if they've got a gun, it might seem prudent to run away, but they end up getting shot in the back or the legs, and then you're in a sticky situation. If instead you can convince them to come closer to you by using buildings and the environment to your surroundings, you can then get in close and just hit them. Hit them over and over and over and over again, and keep close to them, and they won't be able to then use their gun on you, and you can stop them from shooting you, and this will help save your life. Now, the problem with this is you'll probably run out of stamina eventually, so what I'd recommend is dropping back whenever you can to another area so they can't see you as easily, and this will confuse them and mean that they move a bit more stealthily to approach you again, and then you can recover some of that stamina. You will also hear voice lines sometimes when you go into towns and villages, and that's the NPCs. They've recognized you and they're going to try and hunt you down. Use that to your advantage to then close the gap between you, hopefully using buildings and cover to your advantage, get in close and start attacking them. Now, I'm using a pitchfork in this instance, which is the only weapon I've managed to find at this time. It's a terrible weapon, but because I've closed the gap here, he can't use his bow effectively. He will still melee though, so it's worth moving around slightly backwards and side to side to stop him from being able to hit you while you're also meleeing him. Now, this isn't a perfect system. It won't always work. For example, you can see here I ended up fighting two NPCs and they're both wielding guns, and then I just end up getting killed. But you'll find more often than not, if you just keep hitting them, that can really help. Now, NPCs will sometimes drop good gear, but not very often. It can be quite frustrating, especially when you see them very well armoured, that they won't drop much. You might get a gun if you're lucky, but generally speaking, it'll be damaged, and so will the rest of the gear. On this NPC, for example, when they finished killing him, although he had a bow, all he dropped was cigarettes, some sunglasses, and rag shoes, which was terrible. I've also found you can confuse them by using doors to your advantage, so you can keep closing doors on their face, and then they'll open the door back up. You can melee them a bit, close the door again to recover some of your stamina, wait for them to come back in, close the door again, then maybe go in and melee them some more, and hopefully that will help with NPC combat. Not always though, because sometimes they're just a pro shot. Now, I don't want to say that Scum's pay to win, but I would recommend having a look at the DLC. You'll find that there are various different DLCs that you can buy for the game, including Deluxe Content Pack and Character Packs. So the Danny Trejo pack, for example, includes Danny Trejo's skin, but also he gets a massive machete as a base weapon when you start out. The supporter packs, however, have several benefits. You can see I've got the deluxe packs and the supporter packs. I purchased them. It's worth waiting for a sale for those to appear. They have various different things, including in the actions wheel, for example, the ability to just check the time. So when it's night time, I can use that to check what the time is. You also get a bottle of water, a bowl of garlic, some emergency bandages, and a bag as standard with some of these packs as well, which means you don't have to craft the bag, and also you don't have to cut your clothes up to use them as bandages. There's also a photo mode, which means that you can take thumbnails for videos if that's something you want to do, or just take good screenshots in the world. But weirdly, that's locked behind DLC as well. It's worth having the supporter packs. It makes life a lot easier because, as you'll see, you get the emergency bandage, which is a pack of 5 bandages that you can use to heal bleeds. Now, these are very effective, and you can use them on category 2 and 3 bleeds as well as category 1s, which obviously means that it will heal a lot faster than to use multiple bandages. These will also not contaminate your wounds, so they're better than using dirty rags, for example. So these are a much nicer bandage to have, and because they're held in a pack, they're pretty easy to carry around with you when you first start out. So it's worth watching out for that and using those. Now, it is an extra expense, but if you wait till these things are in the sale, it can make life easier. Talking of infections, you'll find that you sometimes get infected injuries, so you can see this bleeding injury is infected. Now, if you've bandaged it, you can still apply alcohol to that wound, and that will get rid of the infection. So you just click on the wound, click on the alcohol that you've found, and then treat that wound to heal it up. If you've ever found that you've got this weird graphical bug, there's one solution to that. It's just hit enter on your keyboard and go into first person view, and then hit enter again and you'll go back to third person, and that usually gets rid of the bugs in my experience. Now, if you see a ship that's sunk off the coast, it's worth going to have a look, because you'll often find some pretty good treasure there. Now, this requires diving down. I'd recommend taking all your heavy gear off first of all before you do this, but then swim over, press C, and then swim downwards. Around the ship, you'll hopefully find some containers on the ground. Now, obviously, this is a little bit tricky to do, but what you want to do is try and find those containers by having a look around. Watch out for those and anything in the vicinity, and see if there's any good loot down there. You'll often find that there is, so it is worth doing, but it is very dangerous. If you go into the water with gear that's too heavy, as I've shown in past tips and tricks videos, you'll find that your clothing will then get soaked, which will make you heavier, and then you'll probably drown. You also have to keep an eye on your health meter. You'll see there's a white bar which indicates your oxygen use on that. If it gets too low and goes into the red area, you'll then suddenly start to lose health. You can see the blue outer bar and the percentage marker dropping there as I desperately climb back to the surface. Now, once you get back to the surface and you get the oxygen back, your health should tick back up. But if you're not quick enough, you will drown. So basically you have to dive down, search for things, go back up, get some air, go back down again, and hopefully find something good. What you do have to watch out for, though, is grabbing anything that will then make you overweight, because if you grab too much stuff, you'll then be overweight, and then you won't be able to get back to the surface. And again, if you spend too long underwater, you'll end up just losing your health, and your health goes down very quickly, and then you're just dead, and then you've got to start again, and that's very frustrating, but it is worth looking into the loot. Now, talking of looting, it's also worth knowing that boxes up high can also contain loot. So when you're going around a warehouse like this, you probably looted the ground level, but there's also boxes on the higher shelves, which you can also loot. This wasn't immediately obvious to me, and it does make sense when you think about it, but they are tricky to get to because you have to climb on other boxes in order to enable you to get up there and search through it, and you still might find nothing in them anyway. The other thing with searching boxes is you'll find quite often there's boxes stacked on top of each other. These can be individually searched, and that isn't obvious either, because you'll often find piles of boxes where when you go to search them, that's the only thing you can search. But in this instance, you can see there was multiple boxes here that were able to be searched, including one that was sort of nudged up against the back of the wall. That was pretty tricky to even get to. If you're not sure what you've searched, you'll find that when you go to search something, if you get a percentage bar, that means the first time you've searched it. If it doesn't give you the percentage bar, you've probably searched it already. And if you watch out for boxes that look like they're open, you won't be able to search those. You want the closed ones. But you can see on this shelf alone, there's loads of individual boxes which you can search and go through. So it's a little bit fiddly to search things sometimes. Now, one of the things that I've discovered that is useful, might not be immediately obvious though, is that chopping up bodies is useful in more than one way. I've killed an NPC here. I've looted their body and I've found various things on it, but now I'm going to chop it up as well. And I want to show you why and why it's worth doing this. This is especially relevant if you're just starting out, because what you want to do is craft a bow and craft arrows. And I often end up with arrows in my bag. But what you can do is you can use a chopped up corpse to actually craft a quiver. In order to craft a quiver, you first need a few other bits. So if you go into the crafting section and search for quiver under all the categories, you'll find an improvised quiver here, which requires skin, any skin, and that includes human skin, and a sewing kit, and then a knife. Now, the sewing kit might be a bit more difficult because you need to find thread first of all, and then you need a needle, but you can make a needle out of bones. So the NPC's bones can be used to make a needle, and then you can make a sewing kit with your thread, and then you can craft a quiver. And now I've got a place where I can put 2 lots of arrows, so that's very handy. Obviously, sewing kits can also be used to repair various different things. So I found this pistol holster on the NPC that I killed. I can repair that, make sure it's fully usable. I've got a sweater on, which is a zombie sweater. That was too damaged to repair, though. Now, when it comes to picking up loot, you might find weight is a problem. So this is a rebar cutter that I'm trying to pick up. It weighs 5 kilograms. My jacket can only let me carry 2. Despite having enough space for it, the rebar cutter won't fit in there. It's worth knowing. Now, if you're overburdened, there's also something else you need to watch out for. I'm overburdened here. I'm really heavy. I'm trying to get things back to base. My stamina has just slightly recovered, but then I just passed out. Now, it wasn't immediately obvious to me why this had happened, but it's important to know this point. So if you're in certain areas of the map, you'll find you might get too hot, and this can lead to hyperthermia. Hyperthermia, when combined with exhaustion, can lead to you just collapsing and blacking out completely, and then obviously being in a lot of danger, especially if there are players around. So I laid down here to rest a little bit. If you go into the health section, you'll then see the warnings. A hypothermia can lead to problems with strength, constitution, dexterity, and health. It can also make you weak and dizzy and obviously pass out like that. And that's simply because I'm too hot. So what I've done here is I'm just going to drop my gloves and other items that might be making me a bit hot. I found a bit of clothing that I didn't need, for example. So I found out the hippie shirt basically only carries one item. I might as well get rid of that. Try and get rid of layers that you don't need necessarily. Obviously, lots of clothing means you can carry more things, but it is a risk. Getting a vehicle can be a pain. We found this tractor. I managed to equip it with some extra wheels. I've got a jack. I figure I'm going to try and do other things to it. Put an alternator on there that I found and some lights. But I really want to get this tractor working so we can use it because it has mega amounts of storage. What I've discovered though is sometimes there are little details that you might have missed, simple things. For example, I found that we couldn't use this tractor because it just didn't have a seat. So you do need to find lots of elements of vehicles sometimes before you can drive them, even if they look like they're usable. Watch out for bears when you're out and about. Bears can be pretty dangerous. I luckily had a shotgun on me to deal with this bear. I missed the first shot, but the second shot put him down. Now, I wouldn't recommend necessarily getting into a fight with a bear, but if you have to, they can be pretty beneficial. Like a lot of other things in the game, you can dismantle and chop up a bear, as I did with a person earlier on, and then it can be used for various things. You can see I've got lots of different skin from the bear. You can then chop up the skinned bear, so you can go on chopping up the bear in lots of ways. You chop up the bear, he then drops various bits. You can craft a bear hat using his head, but you'll also see there's still more bits on the floor. There's paws that have been dropped, and there's a main carcass still, and you chop that up. So you have to go through lots of sort of actions of chopping up the bear and then chop up again. And you'll see once you start chopping up the bear's legs and other parts that you end up with steaks, and you get a lot of bear steaks. So he's probably going to feed me and the family for quite a time. So watch out for bears because they might be worth getting just so you can cook them. If you go to a fire and then go to cook options and then meat skewer, you can then drag the meat into there and then you can start to cook. This is based on the time in the game, so you have to stand there and wait for it to cook, and you have to get this right because you want to take it off of the fire, so cancel the cook when it's finished and don't let the timer carry on, otherwise you're going to ruin the food. Worse, you can't just go and cook something and then wander off and go do looting and then come back because you'll find that your food has just disappeared. So you do have to wait for it. So it is a bit of a chore, but it's worth doing because obviously it's going to make sure you're well fed, and you can keep a stock of this food as well for feeding you and your friends as you go on. You can also find cookbooks to improve your recipes. And if you're lucky, you might find other things, like I found some tea. So we've got a grill and some pots here, and I'm going to make some tea. If you go to cook food, you'll see that with the pots, you can actually choose to do a recipe in there. And one of those is tea. Now, when you go to craft tea, you need various different things, including the tea bag and the water. But if you're lucky and you find sugar and lemon, you can also add those in, and then you can cook the tea. Just like with meat, you have to stand there and wait for it to finish, though, otherwise it won't work. Look out for police stations when you're out in the various different towns in the world. You'll find that on both floors of the police stations there are these locked cabinets. Now, if you have a lockpick and a screwdriver, you can pick the locks on this. You want an advanced lockpick or a standard lockpick or bobby pins that you can craft into lockpicks, as I'll show you in a second. And importantly, you also need a screwdriver. Once you've got both of those things, you can start the lockpicking process, and then you'll be able to search the cabinet once you've opened it. This is a fairly standard lockpicking mechanic from most games, but the important part is to know that you're going to need a screwdriver for it, and also every time you pick a lock, you'll lose a screwdriver. So you'll actually end up running out of screwdrivers depending on how many of these locks you've picked. Once you start the process, it's basically a case of moving the lockpick around, pretending that the lock is like a clock and you're trying to work out where the sweet spot is for it, and then activating the action to turn it. Now, if you've got bobby pins, you can take a bobby pin out of a bobby pin box, and then you can go into the crafting section and you can turn that into a lockpick. What you also want to watch out for is these screwdrivers, these black ones with the yellow bits on them. Those have 40 uses. So that means you can use those to pick a lot of locks. Those are also worth quite a lot of money, so you can sell them to traders as an alternative if you find them. And that's one option. But I like to hold on to them personally because it means that you can pick a lot of locks and you can make a lot of mistakes while doing it and not have to worry about running out of screwdrivers. If you've got a pack of bobby pins, you can craft absolutely loads of lock picks and then just use that screwdriver to keep going until you get loads of good stuff. Now, once your pockets are full from the police station, you'll probably find you've got bundles of ammunition and magazines. What I do here is then I put the relevant bullets into the relevant magazines. So 9mm will go into a 9mm magazine, 50 cal into a 50 magazine, for example. Even if you've not got a gun, it's worth doing this because it then gives you a free space in your bag or in your pockets or wherever else so you can carry more stuff. Obviously, you'll want to unload those bullets in the future. Now, when it comes to crafting, sometimes it can be a little bit problematic. You can see I'm trying to craft this improvised wheel here. I've got all the parts selected, so the sticks, the metal scraps, the planks, and everything else, even the workbench, but it's still not letting me craft it. I find this with a lot of different things in Scum. It sometimes is just a bit weird, and what I found is if you click back on the crafting menu, so from the recipe, you can then basically click into it again. So you can see now when I click into it again, now I can craft it. So you can actually do it, even though everything was selected properly beforehand. Now, one of the things about Scum is basically it requires a lot of patience. So there are often times where you'll end up in a scrap or fighting zombies or NPCs or players, if you're lucky to survive that, or whatever else, and you'll end up very badly injured. So you can see I'm pretty badly injured here. I managed to heal up with bandages, but everything's black and white. I barely got any health. I'm on 12% health. And instead of just carrying on looking for more ways to heal up or whatever else, basically sometimes it pays to just lay down out of danger. This actually did pay off because there was another NPC nearby that if I'd gone out there would have killed me. So I ended up just laying down on the floor. Now this is pretty boring because you have to wait. You have to wait for your wounds to heal and go into the stabilized section of the health section before you'll then start to recover health. But it's better than wandering around in pain, desperately trying to survive. Here I am in another instance with 9% health. I would, however, recommend having a look at your health section and making sure you've not got an infection on the wounds that are stabilizing. So you can see I've got an infection on this C2 bleed, which is going to be a bigger problem. What you can do is you can use garlic as one way of getting antibiotics to deal with that. You only need to eat one bit of garlic in order to sort that out. So once that garlic is eaten, it has antibiotic properties, and that then helps because if you go into the health section, you'll find that that infection has now disappeared. So it's well worth having garlic on it, and you get garlic in the supporter pack. Now, you can lock your chests by dragging locks onto it, as I showed in a previous video, but don't forget to lock them once you've done it to set them to specific members of your group. So you can make it so it's private, or you can set it for everybody. So I like to click on member for mine, for example, and then anybody in the group can access it. You don't want to put a lock on there and then leave it open so anybody in the game can come and get in there. If you're playing on a PvP server, you obviously don't want random people getting it. So in this instance, I've just got my squad mates able to access these chests, and we'll put anything in there that's going to be useful. Hope you enjoyed these tips so far, and let me know in the comments if you've got any of your own. One really stupid one that I learned recently, which I didn't realise I should have done, is that when crafting arrows, I often cut long sticks into smaller sticks and then use those to craft a whole bunch of arrows, and the arrows will end up on the floor. So lots of things when you craft them end up on the floor. You can see there's loads of arrows on the floor here once you've ended up crafting them. And what I was doing before was I was picking them up individually and then joining them in my backpack. So as a standard courier backpack that you get with a supporter pack of the game, what I was doing was when I'd finished crafting, just dragging them onto an arrow that's already in my bag and then joining the group together. This is pretty daft because what you can do is you can just hold shift and then just click on them. So you can just keep clicking on the arrows on the ground and it'll put them in your bag and automatically join them together. It's a stupid thing, but it's just how contrived the game is sometimes.